Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum, dear friends. Hope you had a good week. Starting off with our youth session today. As you would have been knowing, the first topic that we're going to discuss today relates to gratitude. Of course, this is something which we all acknowledge, which we all have that feeling that whenever someone gives us a lot of gifts, someone is gracious to us, and he or she has some special attention given to us, takes care of us, we have that tremendous feeling of gratitude for that person. And that feeling of gratitude is something which stays with us. And not only we acknowledge that gratitude, but we would like to repay that person as much as we can because of the good deed that he or she might have done to us. So gratitude is something which comes to us so naturally. We feel that emotion that someone is looking after us, that someone is taking care of us. And there are people like our parents, there are people like our friends, there are people like our siblings who are there for us whenever we need them. Isn't it so? So this is something that it is so natural to us that these feelings of gratitude, of gratefulness, of being thankful to others, they arise in us in such a natural way. Today we are going to talk about a larger, I would say, scope of gratitude, and that is showing gratitude to people who have been gracious to us, and people who have been created by that creator, who in fact is the source and the fountainhead of all caregiving, of all attention, and of a lot of favors that we enjoy. And of course, that being is God. And to show gratitude to God, my dear friends, is something which is absolutely in line with what we regard as being a recipient of so many gifts, so many presents, and so many unwritten things that we just cannot even count them. And if we just try to make a list of them, that will be an unending list. So to start off, you see, this feeling of gratitude is a very strong means through which we can connect to God. You see, God is a being through whom, of course, we are given this whole scheme of life, vis-a-vis that we would be tried and tested. Our own life would be something which will go through various phases. We will be blessed with a lot of things. We will be deprived with a lot of things. So you see, we need a strong God connection in order to be strong, internally strong, spiritually strong. And one of the bases of this is actually connecting God through the favors that He has blessed us with. And they are numerous, they are uncountable. And the list is huge. So it's just a question of realizing how we can really thank God through those tremendous care and attention giving devices that He has made available to us. And I always give this thing a very special, I would say, position in status, that the biggest thing that we need to perhaps thank God is to have a normal body. And perhaps the most gifted part of our body that we would like to always be with us and never part from is our eyes. So if we are able to see, if we are able to witness the world, and we often take it for granted, don't forget that there are so many people who are blind. Either they are born blind or they have gone blind. And in this way, they have lost that beautiful understanding or that picturesque surrounding that they would have seen with their eyes once. So people who are born blind, of course, they don't even know what eyes are. But look at people who have gradually gone blind. And for such people, eyesight is something which is one of the biggest lack of eyesight, I would say, one of the biggest handicaps that could feel. So imagine yourself that when you wake up in the morning, you can see the people around you, you can see what's going on around you, but not those people who are blind. And I do suggest this small drill, which I call the blind drill, in which is that You shut your eyes, you close your eyes, and then start doing what you intend to do during your daytime. For example, you change your clothes, you brush your teeth, you go to the bathroom, you eat your breakfast, all those things, and with your eyes shut. Imagine what a big hassle it would be. And because of the fact we take things for granted, we see that eyes are some things which we always have, that we seldom have this, or I would say not seldom, but at times we lose sight of this favor and we forget the amount of gratitude we must have for God for blessing us with this eyesight. Ears, the sense of touch, the sense of odor, the sense of taste, all these things which generally most people have, most grown-ups have, but they take it for granted. So we need to actually make a mental note of these blessings of God. Always think about them. And whenever we are sitting vacant, we must, one of the exercises that we can do, one of the mental exercises that we can do is to recall all these things that we have. I remember when one of my aunts died of lung cancer many years ago. And you see what happened, I saw her dying. In fact, the time that she died, I was there right beside her in the hospital. I found her gradually losing her breath because she had lung cancer and the space in her lungs had got infected and the cancer had spread so much that she had to voluntarily take her breath. So imagine yourself, if you had to draw that breath, every time that you draw that breath, you would have to actually think that you're going to do that and plan for that. And I could see that lady doing that every breath that she would take in the last 2 or 3 weeks of her life, she would have to make a very strong effort for that. And I realized that, look at us, we breathe normally when we get up. The biggest machine that mankind could have ever imagined, which is our heart, it pumps and it goes on pumping without any resting. It doesn't need any batteries, it doesn't need any charging, it doesn't need any push. It goes on and on until a person dies. So you see, the amount of gratitude which we have and regarding things which we don't realize is something that we need to actually always have our attention focused to. Lung cancer is, as I said, is something which takes your breath away. Your space in the lungs, which needs to be filled with air, gradually is reduced, and therefore you have to adopt artificial means or you have to make an extra effort. And I could really feel the value of breathing, which we do so normally, so frequently, without even thinking, when I saw her dying. Let me give you another example. I have a friend, a very close friend, and he has a daughter of she's about 20 years old. And look what things that she has with her. She was born blind, she was born deaf, she was born without any hearing ability. And the fourth thing was that she is completely paralyzed. She's just grown like a vegetable, grown on a bed, and all that the parents, of course, my friend here, can hear from her child is those very small voices which at times come out of her mouth. And this has been happening for the last 20 years. And whenever I imagine his plight, I really just cannot express how sad I become and how sorrowful I become. And when I meet him, he is absolutely so fresh and so happy as if nothing has happened. And he thinks that the girl that she's taking care of, and of course his wife included, is like a normal child because they have accepted her in their family as a normal child, and they care for her. She even travels from one country to another country in spite of this. And I just thought that, look at us, we have children, we ourselves used to be children, and you of course are still children, and being deprived and being tested to the ultimate without having eyes, without having the ability to hear and to realize that what's going on around you, you're deaf, and at the same time you just cannot get up from the bed, you're just paralyzed. So it's something that, if you start thinking on such lines, I'm sure you'll find so many people around you, so many cases around you, which beckon you, which urge you to reflect, to think and make a list of things of what we have instead of brooding on what we don't have. Also, I'd like to relate an incident to you many years ago in my life when I was once invited to a wedding in a slum area. This slum area was, of course, something which was not a very clean or hygienically clean area. The slum area had all sorts of dirt lying around, and there were young children playing almost half naked. So what happened was that there was a wedding there, and the wedding actually had, as is generally the case, we have a dining compound or a dining area in a canopy on one side and a sitting area on the other side. So when we were through with the nikah and everything, the host announced that there is this food in that separate compound, and you can go there and just enjoy your food. And we said, okay, fine. So we all of us just gathered in that canopy. And once all of us were inside, I just noticed that the entrance of that compound was actually blocked by a very strong curtain sort of a thing, which fell over that opening so as to stop people from entering. And I just thought in my mind, without giving any further, because perhaps they're stopping flies or mosquitoes, or it could be any reason, but I just dismissed that thought. And once we were through with the food, about 20 minutes or so, the host actually lifted that curtain, and in walked about 40 or 45 young children, half naked. They had small bags, very small shopping bags, and they started collecting the leftover food, which was actually thrown on the ground, half chewed meat, some part of gravy here and there, some rice here and there, all fallen on the ground, which people had actually spilled over. And they started collecting those things and putting them in their bags, and some of them were so hungry that they started to pick up from that area and started to eat them. And I froze when I saw this, and I said, well, look at us. We don't even think that we need, when we have to have a meal, it's already there for you. We don't even have to make an effort, and we have food every day. And look at these children, these 7 or 8 year olds who should have been in their schools, gathering food for their own selves and maybe for their parents or some siblings, and in those bags. And not only that, but eating from the bare ground, picking up those pieces of meat. It was something that, I still have that memory. One of the most painful memories that I have is of that scenery, that scene that has been etched in my mind, and has always made me realize how important it is to thank God every time we sit and have food, because we just don't know. We could have been among those people. Would have been among those deprived people, and just to make 2 ends meet, just to have food, we would have to do and go through such a lot of hassle, and even sacrifice our self-respect and self-honor for that. So you need to understand that this is a society that we are living in. This is a planet that we are living in which at least 30% of the people are living below the poverty line. They don't enjoy the basic necessities of life, like wealth, food, shelter, education, health. And we need to understand that this is something which is a huge phenomena all over the world, and we could have been in their place. It's by God's wish that we are not there, but then there are other people here. So one of the greatest things this feeling of gratitude should fill us up with is that we should try to repay as much as we can what God has given us to the society. And the first step in that is to thank God for His favors. And thanking God for His favors, thanking God for what He has done for us, of course, means that we should have that strong connection with Him, and at the same time share these favors with all those who live around us, in shanties, in areas which are, we know that there are slum areas in every city. There are very few cities in the world which don't have slum areas. Of course, for those people, there are certain countries, maybe Singapore is one of them, maybe Norway is one of them, maybe I can name a few others as well, but I would say 98% of the people of the globe, they are living in areas which have their slum territories and their slum areas. So therefore, looking after those people, trying our best to reach out to them, to fulfill their needs, is something that we all must have as an objective before us. It's like acknowledging the fact that we have been blessed, and therefore we need to share our blessings and do what best we can to provide them, and to simply thank God for what we have. You see, one of the biggest things that we need to do every day, and you know what, the prayer that we offer 5 times a day, it is actually that acknowledgement when we prostrate before the Almighty, when we kneel before Him, when we make dua to Him. These are actually expressions of thanking God, of remembering Him for what He has done for us. So remember, if you have to become regular in your prayer also, keep thinking that this is a means of thanking the Almighty and acknowledging that we are humble people. We could have been easily on the side in which we find so many other people, but God has been gracious and He's been kind to us, and we are now able to do a lot of things. So this is something, I mean, I'm sure all of you must be already thinking of, and you must already be acknowledging. But the thing that I'd like to stress here is that think of something in which you can repay society. And of course you cannot repay God, but what you can do for God is to always be a thankful individual and not complain. Stop brooding about things that we don't have, and always think about things that we have, and make a plan in your life. Now all of you are growing up, all of you would be soon in your professional lives. So from right now, think of something in which you will do something for the society, for the people who are deprived in any way. It could be poverty, it could be ignorance, it could be racism, it could be things which are plaguing our planet in various capacities. Think that you have to play a role for that. And I always try to cite this beautiful dua or supplication of the Prophet Abraham, which is found in the Quran, in which he said that God, when I pass away from this earth, make people remember me as a good person. So if our people are to remember you as a good person, as a person who did something for them, then you must do something for them. And when you're still living, you still have the chance. So chalk out a plan in your life. It's not a short-term plan. Chalk out a long-term plan in your own professional lives. You will do some part of your time would be devoted, and some part of your revenues would be devoted for various causes for which you can actually serve humanity. Okay, now we go on to the next part of our study circle or our youth session, and if I remember correctly, it relates to something which all of us at times marvel at, and we have that awesome feeling about, and that is this issue of magic and voodoo and witchcraft and sorcery and whatnot. So there's one aspect in which we are enamored by these things. When we were growing up, we used to have those magical shows in which people would come and they would play tricks, and we would feel very happy. Remember? So this goes on birthdays, on various functions. So I'm not talking about that sort of magic. What I'm talking about here is that religiously, or at times socially, you get this feedback. Especially parents say, oh well, something is wrong with my child, and I have tried my best, and he or she is a slow learner, or he or she is not living the life up to the mark, and there's some problems. And when they go to see a good child psychologist or a good child doctor, and he or she does all that could have been done, and still the child is not performing or not living up to their standards, then they think that there's something else which is wrong. And more often than not, they would think that there is some magical spell which has been weaved on their child. And this, of course, is not confined to children. Being influenced with magic, people just think that this is something which does happen, and for this they go to faith healers, they go to all sorts of quacks who prescribe all sorts of weird incantations, and you chant various words, even verses from the Quran. You drink water or whatnot, and you're asked to do certain things. And the idea is that this is something which will actually get rid of the magical spell under which you are. And the other thing which is very similar to this is that evil eye, the concept of evil eye, in which you think that someone has actually looked at you in such a longing, with such desire and longing, with some of the abilities that you have, that there is that effect of that evil eye on you, and you are not being able to perform your life or go through your life. Normally you live with a heavy head, you have frequent headaches, you have these bouts of dizziness and all sorts of these things, which at times they don't go away with a doctor's prescription. So this is a perfect playground, a perfect place for someone to say to you and for you to believe that, well, you've been under now on a magic spell. Someone has weaved a spell on you. You are under the influence of some sorcery, some witchcraft, some voodoo going on, and hence what is to be done. So I'd like to just present some of the points that I have learned from the Quran and from the life of the Prophet, which have some guidance, or I would say a lot of guidance on this particular topic. First of all, we need to understand that things like magic, things like evil eye, they do exist, and we just cannot deny them. And there are all sorts of things like black magic, like sorcery, like soothsaying. I mean, part of soothsaying is something which depends on such tricks. So first of all, we must not dismiss them as if they are nothing. They are something, and the Quran has actually alluded to their existence at various places, which tells us that this phenomena of magic is there. And in our own time, I can say that if you have to classify these things, which of course are, I would say, esoteric, or something which are beyond our general grasp of intellect, they have been termed as occult sciences. Sciences which of course are not taught in universities or colleges or even schools, but they are something which there are certain experts of that field who help people out who find themselves under a magical spell. And more often than not, what they teach you to get rid of through these various exercises and these various incantations and these emblems that they suggest you, and these taboos that they would call you to maybe even wear, or all these things, they relate to extreme forms of polytheism. They have a lot of dirty work in them. So I would suggest that, first of all, if any one of you or any one of people around us, they feel that something is wrong with them and they're not feeling normal, so don't take it lightly. First of all, go to a proper doctor to have that diagnosis done as to what is going on. And a lot of psychological ailments have been diagnosed which in 50 years ago were not being diagnosed properly, and people thought that these are various forms of magic under which a person lives. But in the last 50 years, huge developments have been made in psychology, in psychiatry, and you'll find that many of these I would say, if you can call them, these unknown ailments which at times plague people, they are easily treatable. They are curable things, and doctors of this profession can treat you and they can cure you, because these, as I said, these ailments many years ago, the cure was not known, and now we have a proper cure for them, because these are psychological ailments. These are ailments of the brain. At times there's some chemical shortage, at times there is some other phenomena which science can gauge and help you out. So if there ever is something of such sort which comes your way, or maybe you have someone telling you this, that he or she feels that they are under a magic spell, first of all, advise them that they must visit a doctor, and they must at all cost have a proper diagnosis done. And this is all that has to be done as far as treating yourself is concerned, through a doctor. And if the ailment still does not go away, see, what we have been suggested by the Quran and by many supplications or du'as of the Prophet Muhammad is that All the rest must be your prayer towards God to take you in refuge and to protect you from the evil of these evildoers. And therefore, if you memorize the last two surahs of the Quran, which of course are Surah Nas and Surah Falak and Surah Nas, the last two surahs of the Quran, and you just go through their simple translation, you'll know that basically these surahs are meant to give you in the protection of God. So there are certain things against whom you just cannot protect yourself through general and common means. For example, you don't have a medicine for that, you don't have a cure for that. But for all spiritual ailments, if you can call them spiritual ailments, what we are told is that don't go to quacks, don't go to these magicians or people who think that they can cure you, because more often than not, 99%, their business is based on evil. And I mean, they have Satan worship also, they have all kinds of bad things which they involve in what they think is the cure that you might have. So as I said, the first step is to show yourself to a doctor, and the second step is to trust God and keep praying as far as you can, and remembering and memorizing those last two surahs of the Quran. And then there are certain supplications of the Prophet as well, which you can read, which actually amount to this, that you say that God, I alone am feeling something in my body which I am not able to diagnose, and I'm not being able to cure myself, so please help me. And this is something which the Prophet did suggest, and some of these prayers we have in our books, and of course they can be suggested to you as well. So this is as far as one should go. A doctor, which is of course someone who is in your vicinity, a psychologist maybe, and then trust God. Don't go to a quack, don't go to someone who says that he or she has some cure for black magic, because as I said, a lot of things which go in the name of cure or under the label of cure are, in fact, they push you even deeper down, and they make you superstitious, they make you weak in faith, they make you lose your trust in God. And so you have to be very patient in this, and involve yourself as much as you can in some constructive activity. Have yourself some good exercise, some good entertainment, and at the same time, as I said, keep reciting those last two surahs of the Quran. And one more thing which you can add to this repertoire is that as far as you can, remain in a state of spiritual, in a ceremonial cleanliness, which is do the ablution as much as you can. Do your wuzu. As soon as your wuzu breaks, if it is possible, remain in a constant state of wuzu, because that is again something which is spiritually, it offers you that spiritual cleanliness. And evil spirits and these devils and all these things, they don't come towards people who are ritually pure as far as possible. There's no guarantee, of course, but generally this does happen. So the stronger you are in these areas, the lesser is the chance that these evil things can affect you. And as I said, evil eye, something which is called the evil eye, is also something very similar. It's like a psychosomatic phenomena in which something which is said physically has an effect which is psychological. So this is very similar. When someone praises you, you start blushing. Why? You see, physical words, something which was known to you, when you heard those words, you redden in your face, which shows that words have an effect on yourself psychologically. So in a very similar way, evil eye is something which is a phenomena in which a person, when has that yearning or that longing feeling towards you regarding some of your abilities, so that actually transfers into certain forms that we don't know as yet, but it has a psychological effect on the person to whom that person looks at in a longing way, in a way of yearning. But as I said, denying these things, of course, would be something that we cannot, because we know from the Quran and from the Prophet that these two things do exist. The only thing that I would like to caution you from is that the cure for this is either to a doctor or a physician or a psychologist, or to trust God through these supplications and prayers, and pray to Him as much as you can, make dua to Him as much as you can, and that should be the end of that. Don't go to any other third party for any cure or healing, because that is something which, as I said, is more likely to worsen the situation, and it's like a quagmire. You'll just go into it and you'll get stuck in this. And I've seen so many children, I mean grown-up children, I've seen so many parents once they enter this arena, once they enter this sphere, seldom they come out, because it's like going from one to another and to another, and it goes on and on. It's like a cycle which never finishes, and it actually encompasses your life. You become a person who is always jittery, who has lost confidence in life, and you think that you're good for nothing, and that external forces are so strong on you that you are unable to deal with them. So just remember that these forces might be strong, but God is the strongest. So the stronger you connect with Him, you'll find that that refuge that you should have obtained, that spiritual refuge, is there for you, and it's going to help you out, inshallah. Okay, now I'll move on to the third segment of our youth session, and that is regarding the severity of Islamic punishments. I'm sure all of you would be aware that this is one of the areas in which people criticize Islam a lot, that these punishments which Islam has suggested, like for example amputating the hands for a theft, or lashing, inflicting lashes on the back for certain crimes. Similarly, there are certain forms of killing, for example stoning to death maybe, or executing a person in a very exemplary way in which he or she becomes an example in front of the people before that crime had been committed. So these harsh Islamic punishments, or these severe Islamic punishments, are often one of the talks or one of the very common discussion areas when Islam is discussed. And I thought that I would like to talk something or explain some of these Islamic punishments to you, so as to make you realize that often they have been misinterpreted, and people think that as soon as a person steals something, or he is pushed to his limits, maybe he doesn't have food and he steals some food, and the next thing is that his hands would be chopped off for stealing food maybe, or similarly some of the other punishments. So let me just explain this, what the nature of these Islamic punishments, and why is it that they are on the face of it, they do seem very harsh. First of all, you need to understand that these punishments are specifically meant for Muslims, and they are not meant for non-Muslims who are living in a Muslim country. So it's something that are specifically related to Muslim, because they are the people who have made this covenant with God that they will abide by His word, His Sharia, His law, and not violate it. So of course non-Muslims, first of all you need to understand these punishments do not relate to them. For if you are living in a Muslim country and some non-Muslim commits some crime, then the matter will be decided on the basis of some other principles, but not on the basis of the punishments which are prescribed for Muslims. So this is the first thing that you must understand. The second thing which is very important is to understand is that these are extreme forms of reproof, extreme forms, which mean that they shall only be given when a criminal does not deserve any lenience, and the crime that he committed also was not committed in any sort of circumstances which actually vouch that he should be given some concession. So for example, if a person has stolen because of a need, like he's hungry, he's stolen some food, or maybe because the state is not in a position, and let me give you this example. In the time of the Caliph Umar, there was a severe drought, and people had this hunger problem. There was a famine, and the Prophet Umar actually refused to amputate hands for any person who would steal food, just because he thought that because of the fact that these are extreme forms of punishment, and they can only be given when a person deserves no lenience. So therefore these are the times in which the state itself has not been able to provide because of this drought. So he actually revoked, he's held them in abeyance for some time. People often think that he had actually revoked these punishments. No, that was not the case. He said that they are not applicable in an era or in a time when people who commit these thefts, they deserve lenience. So first, the second thing, as I said, you need to understand is that they are not to be given at every instance that crime is committed. They have to be given only in those instances in which a criminal deserves no lenience. The judge is absolutely satisfied, or the jury is satisfied, that no lenience should be given to such a person. He has not stolen out of any compulsion. It is not because of any need. It is a blatant burglary in which he has actually violated the law. He has done something to challenge the security of the country, which of course would mean that if he is treated with lenience, then you would give air and you would encourage other criminals that they can also do the same thing. So this brings me to the third step, and that is that these apparently harsh forms of punishment, which do look harsh on the surface of course, is to discourage any further outbreak of the crime. So if a person who's stolen something and he deserves that extreme form of reproof, if one or two people are given that punishment, you can well imagine how it is going to discourage people from violating the sanctity of life, wealth and honor of other people. And peace and security are guaranteed for a society in which one or two such instances are really severely punished. And as I said, when I say severely punished, I of course refer to the fact that such people don't deserve any lenience. They have done what every person would vouch for is something which merits that they should be punished severely. And lesser than that, if a crime is done but the person deserves lenience, then we can give lesser forms of punishment. For example, you could penalize him. You could offer him some measure, some maybe activity in which he is going to serve the society in any way, which does happen in so many rehab prisons as well, or rehab facilities. So these are the three things, if you are able to understand them. I've not discussed every single punishment because of course that was not my purpose here. If you have questions, I can have them then discussed. But the purpose was here was to just first of all outline the fact that they are meant for Muslims. Secondly, they are extreme forms of reproof and chastisement. They are not meant for any person who deserves any form of lenience. And then the third important thing is that these punishments are basically meant to be exemplary, so that the security and peace of a society is guaranteed. Because if you take very extreme measures for such things, then you can clearly see that people would be extremely and severely discouraged from doing such things, and that would actually signal the fact that the society is very close to becoming crime free. So much for this third segment. I would now go on to the last segment before we enter our Q&A phase, and that is another very important thing and I would say a very noble gesture, and that is organ donation. And because of the fact that there are Muslim scholars who do discourage organ donation, and they think that the person is not the owner or the master of his body, God owns our body, and therefore if we donate an organ from our body, then this is something which we are not authorized to do. And I disagree with this proposition, because in spite of being owners of a body, of course, we are also people who serve the creatures of God. So we own money, and we spend that money the way we like, or the way we think that God has prescribed us. And in a similar way, we have been given life, and many a time we sacrifice our life to save people. Isn't it? We see so many firefighters plunging into fire and bringing out small children and getting burnt themselves, and even they ultimately die. So you see, in spite of the fact that you have been given life and you as a trust from God, but you are given this authority to use it in limits. And if you can even lay down your life for a cause, it's something very commendable. And in fact, in Islam, such people are called martyrs, who lay down their life for the cause of God. So if this can be done, I don't see any reason why organ donation or organ transplantation cannot be done. So therefore, religiously, there is not a single convincing proof. And there is another argument which is also offered in favor or against organ donation, and that is that it actually mutilates the body, it disfigures the body, and therefore it would be like disrespecting the remains of a person. Again, I would disagree with this logic, because this is not mutilation. Mutilation is in the intention that you would like to disfigure the body, to humiliate it. But here we are not doing that. What we are doing is we're just trying to extract an organ, maybe the liver, maybe the heart, or maybe any organ which can be of use, how can that be termed as mutilation? So neither does the first argument hold any ground, and I don't think that the second argument also holds any ground. These are the two arguments which have been generally offered by our religious scholars in against organ donation, and I don't go along with any of them. So therefore, my request to all of you would be: there are already many countries in which you become an organ donor as you get a driving license, and you're given this opportunity to sign a document in which the state says, okay, if you pass away, then you can donate such and such an organ, even your skin, your kidneys, your liver, your eyes, the cornea that you through which you can see. So I would strongly urge all of you, every single one of you, if you haven't become an organ donor as yet, or your age is not as such, but whenever you reach that age, or if you've already reached that age, do consider making this organ donation as a service to humanity that you can do, because this is something that is going to happen once you pass away. It's a free service that you can do to humanity. The only thing that you perhaps need to do, and that too not in every household, is to convince your parents, because parents are very emotionally attached to their children, and when they see that is something being pulled out from their body, of course it's difficult for them. But if you are able to convince them that this is for a cause, this is for humanity, I'm sure many parents would cooperate with that. So write down a will for that. Whatever your age, you can write down a memorandum and tell your parents, you tell your friends that I have written a will, a memorandum which informs people that once, if I pass away, whatever my age, all organs which can be of any use to humanity, to people, because there are organizations all over the world. Wherever you live, I'm sure you'll find many organizations who, even the state itself collects these organs, and there are some private organizations. You can just Google them in your area. So please do consider this. It's a huge thing that you can do. Imagine that your eyes are able to light up. Your donation, or your eye donation, is able to light up the world of a blind person. Look how happy he would be to receive a donation, an eye donation from you, and he can see the world. We just talked about blindness a few minutes ago. Look, people who have deficient liver. Even skin grafting is something which is becoming so common. You graft skin for people who have they have burn injuries, and that can help them as well. And then we have many other things which your body can really contribute to other people who are living. So do consider this. I would very strongly request you to make this effort and to think on these lines and become an organ donor in your country, in your city, and feel as if that this is some service in which you have to do absolutely nothing, because you wouldn't be there. You would have already passed away, and may God give you a long life. But we all have to die one day. So whenever that incident happens, this should be our gift. In fact, this could be our token of gratitude to God. We just spoke of gratitude in the very first segment, and I think this is a beautiful token of gratitude to God, that He gave us something and we are paying it back to some other person who is in need, and that too when we ourselves are no longer there. And a word here I'd like to add is also when we are living, there are certain donations that we can still make. For example, you can become a blood donor. Blood is something which you can periodically give after consulting your doctor, and this is something which is very helpful, and this is something that you can do without, if you're still in this world. Similarly, there could be other organs. As science is becoming more advanced, we find there are other organs also which you can donate while you're still living. So that is another area which you could look into. But my request would be that if that is at the moment not possible because of a number of reasons it could be, at least think of becoming an organ donor once you pass away, and make a will, write down a memorandum, tell your parents, tell your friends, tell your children or whatever who are close to you, so that this huge noble gesture can be done. Right. So I come to an end to my character counts youth session, and now I'll just transfer my mic to my co-host, and please proceed with the questions.
Thank you so much, Dr. Shehzad. Let's kick off the Q&A session. And so far, we have one question from Minnie. So, Minnie, please go ahead and ask your question.
Thank you. So the first question was, what's a good way to ask people to not waste food? Because I always see that happening when guests come over or we go to parties. And do you tell people to not do that? Because oftentimes, like, every time I've tried telling my friends, it doesn't work. They're just like, we're full, we can't eat this anymore, and they throw away the food.
So you see, there are so many facilities which are available in various cities in which this maybe leftover food is put to use. For example, at times animals are fed from them. At times, if the food is such that it can be broken down into pieces in which the part which is left over is an independent part which other people can consume. So they have these services. I know some people in some cities who are doing this privately to help out. What they do is they collect such food and they either go to a prison facility or to a hospital or to even a zoo place where animals are, so that this leftover food can be consumed. But as I said, this is something which needs to be made popularized. You have to create an awareness that this is something that we are wasting and it can really be put to good use. And if you're not able to convince your friends, don't worry about them. You can do it yourself. Whatever you can do best for in your own city, just Google and find out how waste food can be actually consumed, and I'm sure you'll end up with some organization which can even come to your doorstep and pick up for consumption. So the rule is simple. If you can do it with your friends, very good, because that would be a larger chunk. But if your friends are not there, or maybe if you've gone to a restaurant where you've just had food, maybe again you can have the food packed and brought over. Maybe you can just have it frozen or maybe put in the fridge, and the next day you can have it disposed of through those organizations. So it's just a matter of thinking that, as I said, convincing people is something which is not always possible. But since you are all convinced yourself, so do what best you can, and at the same time, keep talking to people and make them realize that it's a huge thing that we are blessed with food, and there are so many people who are without food. So why not create this small network in which this leftover food can be given to other people.
What about, when you said that people were born with disabilities, do they get to complain, or is no one entitled to complain because they weren't born normal?
I couldn't understand your question. You say that they complain regarding these deficiencies?
Yeah, like if they complain, it's okay, right?
Right.
Because they weren't born with stuff that people are usually born with.
So you see, of course, this sense of deprivation does get the better of us, and we do feel that we have been deprived in some way. But you see, the role of the parents now jumps in, and they have to make the child understand. Because you see, what generally happens is that if a child is deprived of one faculty, there is some other faculty which is much more pronounced, or in a very advanced form in that child. So it's like instructing your child, educating the child and making that child realize that God has given us so many other things, and one of the reasons that we need to be thankful to God is that if we don't have eyesight, or maybe we are not able to hear, look, we have so many other abilities in ourselves. And these schools for blind, or these schools for deaf people, they teach this actually. They make you realize that it's not just this hearing aid which is going to help you. A bigger thing which is going to help you is that attitude that you should develop of being thankful for what you have and not worry about what you don't have. Because and you make them realize that there have been people all around the world who have absolutely conquered these disabilities, and they have risen to one of the highest highest positions of the world. You must be knowing one of the famous Kennedys, the first Kennedy. He was paralyzed, and he actually was someone who was paralyzed from his leg up, and in spite of that, he fought for that. And then we have, other examples as well, in which people have conquered their disability and risen to one of the to areas of fame in which they have actually achieved even more than people who don't have those disabilities.
Okay, thank you. Last question. So, about magic and witchcraft, I often hear that, like, only normal normal public complain about it. Like, how come this doesn't affect celebrities or famous people?
Sorry, I couldn't get your question. Please, could you repeat it?
About magic and witchcraft, how come this only affects normal public and not popular or famous people?
How do you know that?
Well, they never complain about it.
There are a lot of people who don't complain about things, and they have them, because you see, this is something which people hide as well, because it's like a weakness, and people would not like to share these weaknesses. So I have seen so many celebrities when they pass away or when they are in their old age, they in fact disclose a lot of things through which they went, and they didn't disclose either because of embarrassment or because some taboo was attached to them. But I think that this is a fairly normal human behavior, and all sorts of people are prone to it. It's not just common people. There are people who in various walks of life, because you see, what it actually depends on the attitude that you adopt towards that ailment.
Can you describe a bit more about the attitude that you're talking
So
about?
the attitude is that you become superstitious. You see, instead of going to a doctor or showing yourself to a proper medical specialist, you start going to these quacks. You have that easy way out. You think that something is wrong with you spiritually, and you need a faith healer. So I would say you act in an unscientific way, and because there are all sorts of people in the world, all of them are not always scientific in their attitude, in their approach. They at times are unscientific as well, or I would say illogical as well, and they prefer this path in which they think that doctors cannot do anything, and you have to go to a faith healer, or you have to go to a magician maybe, or a sorcerer who can help you out. So it's like discarding that faculty of logic. Or at times what happens is that even a doctor is not able to cure you, and then you say, okay, now something is really wrong with me, and instead of trusting God more, instead of asking yourself that you have to accept certain things and always think positively and forget about some of the things that are going wrong, contribute what you can, become a positive person, etc., etc., you become a person who is always who becomes a pessimist, who always looks at the dark side of things, and he starts brooding and doing all sorts of negative things. So it's more of an attitude problem.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Up next is Musa Harun. Musa, please ask your question.
So my question is, why should we follow our Creator?
Why should we follow your Creator?
Yes, sir.
Because if you think that He is your Creator, there could be two scenarios. If you think that He has created you, and if you think that He has not created you, I think the question cannot arise for a person who thinks that he has a Creator. If you have a Creator, it's much like trying to find out that why has He created you in the first place, and that begins your whole quest and your journey towards finding your Creator, towards analyzing why did He create us, what is the reason behind bringing us in this world, what happens if we die, and what will transpire if we do go to bad deeds. So this question actually arises for people who think that they have been created, or it should arise. And of course, then there are various answers given to these questions. But if you are a person who thinks that there is no Creator, like there are like people who are atheists maybe, or some other people who think there's no God, or there's no such thing as a Creator, it's just a figment of your imagination, then of course the argument is going to be different. So you have to first classify which of the two categories that you fall in, and accordingly the arguments maybe, or the conversation would hinge with different line of reasoning for both.
Sir, I believe there is a creator.
Okay, so if you believe that there is a creator, then you see this question has to come in mind that why did he create you? Does he communicate with you? Is there a purpose in life? What happens when you pass away? If he has created you, is he a just God? You don't find justice going on in this world. So if God is just, then why is there injustice in this world? And why do we have a conscience? The conscience tells us what right and wrong is, but at the same time, it's not always right and wrong which end up with the same fate. Our conscience says that bad people should have a bad fate in this world, and good people should have a good fate in this world. Whereas we see at many a time that there are evil people, they succeed in life, and there are good people who fail in life. So you see, these are the questions that bother you, and then you should realize that if someone has created you and has had a very big role in your creation, for example, giving you parents, for example, giving you a normal body, so is there something which he expects out of you? And then if you have that spiritual feeling in yourself of right and wrong, then is there a way in which God has guided you through maybe his books, through maybe his prophets or personalities which he has chosen to inform certain facts? So you see, these are some of the questions that you should have an answer to. Because if you believe in a creator, if you don't believe in a creator, then the question is the questions which are different. But if you believe in a creator and you still feel that you should not follow what he says, then you must have an answer to all these questions, and a convincing answer. And if you don't have a convincing answer and you find other answers which are more convincing, which tell us that the creator has made you for a purpose, he has given you life for a purpose, he's going to give you death for a purpose, he's going to make you relive for a purpose, he's a just God. And if you find injustice in this world, it is not because God is unjust, it is because this world is not based on the principle of justice. So you have these different lines of argument which you can pursue step by step. But as I said, I can only hint towards these. For more details, of course, this would need more analysis and more awareness of the background that you're coming from, and the thing which is bothering you maybe, or the questions that you have other than this basic question in mind. So that would, yes.
Sir, currently I'm more bothered that I'm a little confused if there is a creator or not, but I feel I should first know that why should we follow him, and then I should continue my search that if there is a creator or not.
I think it should be the other way around, because if there is no there is no creator, why should the second question even arrive? The first question should be that you should first find out whether there is a creator or not. Because if there is a creator, then there is a stream of questions that you need to answer. First of all, look at your own self. That do you feel that you are created? You see, when you look at a piece of furniture, you immediately think that this couldn't have come into being out of its own thinking, or maybe something which happens out of nothingness. There must be a carpenter who has fashioned it. When you look at a house, you must always think that there must be an artisan who has built that house. So when you look at yourself, what signal does that your body give? That did we come into existence out of our own selves, or our own self gives us this feeling that we have been created, we are dependent, and the whole story of life as it goes on, this creation story, it actually tells us that we are not the masters of our own destiny. Someone else is doing something for us, someone else is doing that creation process. And if you are convinced that there is a creator, then the second thing is that you must know regarding the attributes of that creator, how he thinks, what he has in mind, how he communicates, what are his demands, or what is the purpose that he is. If he is a creator, he has not just created us, he has created this entire universe which is full of so many stars and nebulas and galaxies. So if he has created all this, and we seem to also think that as far as of today, we think that this huge universe, just one planet on which there is life, at least for now. There could be other planets, but to our knowledge, we only know of this earth. Then why has God created all this, and with such creativity which exists in him? And then our own human nature tells us that there is something, that there are certain norms that all of us follow. All of us feel, I mean, if you look at your instincts, all of us follow a particular pattern. We have the same way in which we live, we eat, we grow, we have desires. And on the other hand, all of us have that conscience in us which tells us what right and wrong is. And this is something which is common to all humanity, that all these human beings who have been created have a conscience in them which tells them what right and wrong are. So you see, this is how you should pursue your discovery, I would say, or rediscovery of what your creator actually intends to do. Otherwise, of course, the other option is that you say that there is no creator and I am the master of my destiny. I am in this world. Once I pass away, there is not going to be any more life, and therefore I should make hay. I should enjoy life as much as I can, and that's the end of that. So you see, first you have to travel or to tread upon these pathways and take questions one by one and try to answer them one by one.
All right.
Thank you so much. Next, I have a written question, and the participant is asking that many people believe in astrology, palmistry, and lucky stones. What's your take on that?
So you see, you need to find out whether these lucky stones, this palmistry, astrology, face reading, etc., have they become sciences or not as yet? Because you see, at the moment we find a lot of conjecture which is based on them. If you pick up a newspaper, or if you pick up a magazine in which some astrologer might have suggested that the stars are in this, the zodiac is, the signs of the zodiac are traveling in this way, or the star is in a particular sphere, and this is going to help affect your decision making. You see, you'll find that there is so much conjecture which goes on that it's more often than not makes us more superstitious. So I would say that unless and until any of these have some scientific backing means that there is some proof that whatever they say is not mere prediction which is going to just disturb your decision making. It has to be very sound. For example, if these stones have an effect on your life or maybe your body, maybe there are some rays, then science must back it up with some proof. So all these sciences, that is why I say that they are called occult sciences, the hidden sciences. And they have yet to become normal sciences like those physical sciences and social sciences, which can be taught in universities and in colleges. So the best way, have you ever seen that a person has done a master's in palmistry? Have you ever known of a person who is a PhD in magic? No, because you see, these subjects cannot be taught in universities. Only those subjects can be taught in universities which have become proper sciences, which can be reasoned out and which can be taught. So therefore, things which have yet to become a full science, if you start relying on them, then it is all the more probable that you'll end up depending on them. And because of the fact that they don't have the backing of science with them, so they'll make you superstitious. At times, your intellect would be telling you to make a certain decision, but you'll pick up a newspaper and say, oh, well, today is something in my sign is telling me my prediction that I have for today is that I should not go in the evening and not go out in the evening. I should not wear blue clothes, or I should stay away from a restaurant, etc. So because of these things, and your own intellect is going to tell you something very different, and most of the time our intellect is telling you the correct thing. But because you are prone to those zodiac signs, what happens is that you lose your senses, I would say, not in a bad way. You stop using your intellect and you start relying more on things which are conjectural, which are speculative in nature, and that leads you to nowhere. You might lose a lot of things. You might take wrong decisions because of this, and end up really embarrassed and feeling so ashamed that this decision you took would have been easily the other one, because it was more logical, more backed by science, and you never took that.
Next question we'll take from Minnie, and it's off topic though, or maybe related to the previous lecture. So go ahead, Minnie, please ask your question.
Thank you. So I wanted to ask the question about when you talked about backbiting. Would it count as backbiting if I tell my parents like what my brothers have been doing, and if the things that they do piss me off, can I tell them? And
So
without making it something?
if the purpose is correction, if the purpose is to have them reformed, if the purpose is that you'd like your mother or your father that they would, I mean, it's not that you're belittling them or you're humiliating them. The purpose is you're informing them so that they could take proper steps indirectly or directly to make them better people. This cannot be classified as backbiting. Backbiting, as I
But
said.
sometimes it's just sorry. Sometimes it's just me venting.
So if you're just venting your emotions, that I would suggest that you should not. Okay, so you should not vent your emotions. I mean, it should be constructive. I do understand that we do get discouraged. We really get frustrated when these things go on, and we would like to express our disgust, maybe, or our frustration. But remember what Prophet Jacob is reported to have said in the Quran, "Innama ashku basi wa huzni Allah," that when I feel this disappointment in people, I'll express it before you, or God, and just vent out my emotions before you, so that I feel light at heart, and at the same time my petition is actually with you, and you can take that necessary action. So I think to vent out your emotions, the ideal would be to vent them out before the Almighty, and to express them wherever you need to express them is for the purpose of correction and reformation.
Thank you so much. That answers it.
Thank you so much. Dr. Shehzad, we have one comment at Facebook, but I would like your take on it as well. So the participant is saying that it is very difficult to make people understand a psychological problem versus effect of magic spells. They don't consult a doctor just because they are afraid of being called a psycho. So my question to you is, how do you what steps you should take to break this social taboo?
I think this is a very valid question, and we get these names whenever we go to a psychiatrist, or maybe we have this the psychological ailment. I think that the reason here is because psychological ailments are always classified with mental disabilities or mental deficiencies, and we must realize that it is a very normal thing. Just as our body has ailments, like we get a headache, we get a stomach ache, we get insomnia, and that is treatable because this is some deficiency in the body, there's some problem in the body. We must have this acceptance slowly. It should be at least communicated to our surroundings that these things are at your psychological level as well. Just as your body, when it aches, it needs medicine. If you have a certain mental attitude or a mental deficiency, there are very, very helpful medicines which are going to take care of you. Or even at times you don't need a medicine, you just need a session with a psychologist in which you are able to discuss your mental frustration or disappointment, and you get it over with. So I think it is very difficult, I understand, and I know that people don't go to doctors simply because of this, that their own family members would make fun of them. But they need to understand that, the quality of life is much more important than what people call you. And you have to take that first step. You have to be brave, because your life is in your own hand. If you continue to suffer simply because people are going to call you names, maybe that suffering is going to multiply, because there is not going to be any end to it. That's going to go on and on. But if you go to a doctor and you are able to cure yourself, and that could even be done in a secret way, if you don't want to share that visit to the doctor with other people, that can even be kept a secret if that is possible. But if that is not possible, then I think the decision that should be made is that the quality of life is much more important than the names by which we can be called as a result. Because you see, this quality of life is going to give you a whole new opportunity in life. You can make the best of your abilities. You can contribute what best you can. You can do justice with your professional life. So just weigh these things, and this weighing will give you the courage to go on and forget thinking what people are going to say, and do what is right. And that courage and that strength is, of course, is something which can be obtained if you have people who are like-minded, maybe who are going to encourage you, who think that doing this thing is in line with a proper scientific attitude. I'm sure if there are people who call you names because of going to a doctor, there are several other people, maybe also among your friends and family, who are going to support you for this. So look for them and have their support, and think that it's a challenge in life. You see, life is not without challenges. You have different challenges in life in different times of life. If this is one of your challenges, be bold, face that challenge, take it head on, and just say that I'm going to face the challenge, I'm going to overcome that challenge, and I'm going to make the best out of it. So it's just making that commitment, that will, and that urge that you find in your own self, and you'll find that power in your own self, that the reserve of energy in yourself is enough to propel you.
The next question I have from one of the participants, and she want to know that if you can explain or elaborate the concept of nazar in Islam.
So I just did. You see, evil eye or nazar, which is called that person is affected psychologically. We find in a hadith in one of the collections of hadith in which the Prophet says that al-ain al-haq, which means that nazar does exist. You just cannot deny it. It's like a psychological. As I said, when you praise a person, that person starts blushing. So you see, words have a physical impact. Similarly, I assume that looking at a person longingly when that person is doing something that you desire, that you also do that does affect somehow the psyche of that person. We don't know the mechanism as yet. It's conjecture. Science is still struggling to find it out. But I do think that there is some connection, and it does exist. But the important thing is not to get overwhelmed with it or bogged down with it, because even if it is there for you and you have been inflicted by an evil eye or by a nazar, again, as I said, the best way to come out of it, because you see, you need to first assess whether it is nazar or not. It could be some other ailment. It could be some mental deficiency. So still go to a doctor to find out what if there's something wrong. Rule out that first, and at the same time, as I said, seek God's protection, seek God's refuge through those last two surahs of the Quran, and there are some other supplications and du'as of the Prophet Muhammad as well, which actually have these words that God, I find this ailment in me, and please get rid of this ailment that I am not being able to understand to these effects. So, as I said, again, that is the right course, whether it's magic, whether it's evil eye, whether it's hauntedness or anything. You see, what happens is that all these occult sciences or these hidden sciences, they have this, they have a certain existence. The only thing is how to counter them, how to have those remedial measures. So what I am trying to make is, the point that I'm trying to make is that for these remedial measures, don't go to a faith healer or to a quack or to such people. Go to a doctor, a proper doctor, and at the same time, rely as much as you can on these prayers and these du'as of the Quran and of the Prophet.
Thank you, Dr. Shehzad. Just one last question for you. So when we are talking about Surah Al-Falaq and Surah Nas, so many people are under the, or their understanding is that probably Prophet Muhammad ﷺ was under a magic spell or something. How do you elaborate? Or does it really have to do something with the magic spell?
So we do know that the Jews in the time of the Prophet, because of the fact they were prone to sorcery and magic and witchcraft, they did try to weave a spell of magic on the Prophet, but they never succeeded. Unfortunately, what has happened is in some of the narratives of Hadith literature, the way this incident has been reported, it looks as if the spell of magic had an influence on the Prophet. For example, he would not remember whether he had prayed or not. He would not remember whether he had gone near his wives or not. This is what is reported in Hadith literature, and it is here that the problem lies. But if you gather all the reports of this Hadith literature which say that the Prophet was under a magic spell, and at the same time you also study the Quran, you'll realize that what actually happened was that they tried to weave a spell on the Prophet, but they never succeeded. However, our Hadith literature has gone beyond this and portrayed as if they succeeded in this magical spell, and not for 1 or 2 or 3 days, for a whole period of 6 months the Prophet was under this spell, and he would not know what's going on. He would not be very aware of his surroundings. I think it is here that the problem lies, and in which the exact situation is not portrayed. As I said, the exact thing is that they tried and they failed. They could not do so. But our hadith literature, on the other hand, says that they tried and they actually succeeded in some cases, in most of the cases, I would say.
There's one more question on Facebook, and I'll read it out for you. Can you please tell about a hadith regarding imitating disbelievers? One of my friends said that after marriage, the girl changed her name and attached his husband's name to it, and it's the custom of disbelievers. So, are we accountable to this, or this hadith is related to only religious imitating?
No, this is not even related to religious imitating. This is, in fact, this is not a very sound narrative in the first place. But if you even consider it to have some value, this was a specific time in the era of the Prophet when the disbelievers were being separated from the believers. So the Prophet was organizing them separately, because you see, when disbelievers were bent upon denying God or denying the Prophet himself, so what does happen in the era of the Prophet is that believers and disbelievers, they are isolated from one another, so that the judgment of the Almighty can be passed on the disbelievers. So it was in these circumstances that certain believers refused to vacate the areas of the disbelievers at times, because they were living there. And it is here that it is said that if there is some attack by the believers on the disbelievers because of God's judgment, then if you don't vacate that area, you would be regarding as one of them. You would be regarded as one of them. Man tashabbaha biqaumin fahuwa minhum. A person who imitates, here imitation means who remains with them, is regarded to be among them. And then if there is some attack by the Muslim forces or the believing forces, and there are some believers on the other side, then they would not be shown any lenience, and they would be classified among them as if they are imitating them, as if they are with them. So this particular narrative has absolutely no bearing on either changing your name or even imitating them, like for example wearing their dress, which is often made the basis that this narrative tells us that we should not imitate non-Muslims in their mannerisms. No, this is not the case entirely. As I said, this narrative has a very specific context. It relates to the era of the Prophet, in which believers and disbelievers were being segregated, and believers were being told that if they still exist amongst the disbelievers, then they would be with them and they would be classified with them. And the way believers are going to deal with those disbelievers, if some believers stick with them, they will have no different treatment. That is what the background of this narrative is. So changing names after marriage, or as I said, doing anything which resembles the ways of disbelievers, except of course it's not of any nature of vulgarity involved in it or any polytheistic practice in it. That is another principle of religion. There is absolutely no prohibition in copying customs or mannerisms of different cultures, of different religion, as I said, of course, barring vulgarity and barring any polytheism in them. So that is the explanation of this narrative, and as I said, it has nothing to do with imitation in any way. It has a specific connotation vis-a-vis the era of the Prophet.
Thank you very much. Minnie, I have another question for you. So Minnie, go ahead.
Thank you. I got confused about your answer to one of the other questions. You said that the Prophet was not inflicted with magic, but then what made him forget stuff?
So what I'm trying to explain was that those narratives, they are not authentic. When I said that these narratives depict that as if he was under a magical spell, this is how hadith literature has gone beyond what the Quran actually says. The Quran tells us that they tried to do magic, but they never succeeded. On the other hand, these narratives, they depict a situation which is against the Quran, and therefore these narratives cannot be accepted the way they portray, in which the Prophet was actually had these illusions or these imaginations, in which he would think that there's something has been done and something has not been done. So I was trying to negate that those are hadiths which tell so. They are actually against what the Quran has actually stated in this regard.
Did someone make them up?
Well, you see, it's not always the case of making up. It's like at times being misunderstood. At times you see what an onlooker, he perceives something, and at times there's this blatant case of concoction as well. So it's not always concoction, but it could be concoction. At times, things are not transmitted purely. What you understand, what you see, you relate it, and the next person is not very careful in picking and choosing words. And at times, that chain of narration dilutes or even disfigures the actual happening. So, and of course, as you said, concoction also was one of the things that happened in case of a lot of hadith as well.
Thank you so much. So that's pretty much it for the day. We can call off the session and we'll see you inshallah next week.
Inshallah.
Thank you so
Okay.
much.
Bye.